Hi friends, my name is Afil Ahmed, and in this particular video I will show you how to use the Foreach Loop Container in SSIS with file enumerator. Sometimes we need to read multiple files from a particular location and then load data into a different destination. So in that scenario we can use the Foreach Loop Container. So if you go to the SSIS toolbox, so you can just drag and drop the Foreach Loop Container into that control flow task, and if you edit it, so there are multiple options here. So there are enumerators, different enumerators. In this particular case we will be going to discuss the file enumerator only, and then we have options of defining the location of the folder to which we are going to look into. So if our files are situated in a particular folder, so we are going to read that particular folder only. And then the file wildcard. So for example, we can look through all files that ends with .csv, or we can look through all files of txt, or maybe we can write our own wildcards here. For example, we can load files that ends with 2017.txt. okay, so we can configure the files, the wildcard like this. So in this particular case we have around 10 CSV files that we exported in our last video, in the for loop container video. So this particular CSV file has these kind of columns and data into it. So in this particular video we will load data from all these 10 CSV files into a single SQL Server table. So we are just doing a reverse of what we did in the last example. So as we are going to read all CSV files from this particular location, okay, so first of all let's create a couple of variables. The first variable that we are going to create is FilePath, because this will store the current path of the file. So for example, for first file it can be this customer1.csv, for another file it can be customer2.csv, and so on. So this particular SSIS variable FilePath will actually store the current value of the file, okay. And then we will create another SSIS variable cnt, so it will store the number of records in a particular table count, okay. So when we will be going to load the data, at the same time we will insert that particular information into a separate SQL Server table. So I have a SQL Server table, FileInfo, which has an ID as an identity column, so it doesn't need any input from our side. And then we have column FilePath, record count and dated. So this FilePath will be the name of the file that we just loaded, and the number of records that that file contains. So as soon as we will load files one by one, we will also insert a record into this particular table as well, okay. So first of all, as we are going to read data from a flat file, so just drag and drop the data flow task, as we are going to insert data to a SQL Server table. So rename the data flow task as load data, and then modify it. And as we are going to read data from a flat file, so just drag and drop the flat file source and configure it. Double click and configure it. Click new, and make a connection to the CSV file. Customer1.csv, and the text qualifier is double quotes in this particular file, and click preview. So now you can see that data seems to be fine. Click OK. Okay, so we have configured our flat file source, okay. And now as we are going to store the number of records in a table into a variable, then we need to use the row count variable. So row count variable will actually store the number of records in a table in a SSIS variable for some time, during the execution of the program. And then as we are going to write data to a SQL Server table, so we need the OLEDB destination, and then double click OLEDB destination, click new to create a new connection, click new. Our server name is Ahmad and the database name is testing. Okay, alright, so change it to table or fast load, and then person data. Okay, click mappings to make sure that the columns from source are mapped with the destination. Click OK. So we have configured our data flow task, but as of now the flat file destination connection is static, so we need to make it dynamic. So go to the properties of flat file connection manager, and then under the expressions go to the connection string, because if you look here, connection string property stores the path of the file. So as we are going to loop through all files in a folder one by one, so this property needs to be changed as soon as the our loop will iterate through files. Okay, so we have set the connection string as dynamic value, file path. So file path will change every time the loop will go through. Click OK. Okay, so now our flat file source is dynamic, so it will loop through all files. Go to the control flow. Okay, now we need to insert a record into a FileInfo table, because we want to know like which table, which file has how many records, and which file got inserted with how many records in it. Log. Okay, logs. Right click and edit it, make a connection to the testing database, and then under the expressions go to SQL statement source, go to expressions, and then write a query here. Okay, insert query, insert into FileInfo values. ID is an identity column, so it doesn't need any input from our side. Another column is FilePath, and the third column is record count, so it will be it needs an input from our side. And then the last column is dated, so it needs the current date time. Okay, so just copy and paste it here, and then replace the value of the file path with the actual file path. Okay, that will have the current file path, and then the record count. So the CNT SSIS variable will contain the number of records in a file, so and convert it to a string type, as this expression supports the strings. Click OK. Okay, so this particular code will actually insert the file path and its number of and records in it in a log table. And then it's time to configure the Foreach Loop Container. So right click and edit the Foreach Loop Container, go to the collection, and then from the Foreach file enumerator is already selected, so we don't need to do anything here. And under the folder, browse to the location C files, because at this particular location our files are situated, and the wildcard will be start.csv. Okay, so it will load all CSV files. If you do start.star, so it will load all files at that particular location. Okay, if you click on the traverse subfolders, so it will go inside the backup folder as well, and will try to load this data as well. Okay, but we don't want to do that. Okay, so just uncheck the traverse subfolder. Okay, and then go to the mappings, and inside the mapping we need to map the file path, the value of the current file that SSIS will iterate through. That value will be provided to the file path SSIS variable. So when SSIS Foreach Loop Container will read the value customer1.csv, so this value, the full path, will be assigned to file path SSIS variable. Okay, and second time when our SSIS package will read the value, this particular C files customer2.csv, so then the value of the file path will be updated by customer2.txt. Okay, so we have configured our Foreach Loop Container as well. Click OK, and now we just need to execute the SSIS package by clicking on start, and it should read data for all 10 files and insert into a SQL Server table, and then also log the data, also log the information into a separate table as well. So the package ran fine, and then refresh the table. So our table name was person_data. So you can maybe select top 200 records, so you can see that now we have data there, and you can do a count star as well from from the table to make sure that it loaded data. Okay, so sorry, master database was pre-selected, we need to select the testing, so just redone. So it has 19,000 records, 19,800 records, and if rerun the query FileInfo, so it should have 10 records for all the files. Okay, so for customer 1 it has 3,520 records, and the file got loaded at this particular time. Similarly, it has information for all 10 files. So it's quite useful when we have lots of files and a process that loads data. So if you want to know like which file has how many records, so that can be helpful in some of the cases. So thanks guys for watching the video, and if you like the video then please click the like button and do subscribe to our channel to see more videos on SSIS. Thank you.